The French offices of Elon Musk's X have been raided by Paris Cybercrimes Unit. The operation was part of an investigation into suspected complicity in the possession and generation of child sexual abuse material, or as many of us might know it, child pornography. At the center of this case is Grok, which is Musk's AI tool. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office said that Grok has been used to potentially, quote, produce harmful sexualized image and video content. Now, joining us to break all of this down and make some sense of it is Benjamin Bull. He's general counsel for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Benjamin, I know this is an issue that NCOSE has, of course, been closely monitoring, but could you tell us what you know about the problems with Grok specifically?
Well, Grok has brought the business practices of X to the culture, to the public's attention. But the problem of child pornography on X or previously known as Twitter has been out there for years for those of us who work in this area. In fact, we have a lawsuit against Twitter right now on behalf of two children whose images were monetized and who were trafficked on X. And in that lawsuit, we learned that on Twitter or X, there are hundreds of thousands of child pornography images every day that are bought, sold, and traded. Now, and Twitter knows about it, and it takes very little, if any, action against it. They'll do something every so often with a lot of fanfare, especially if they have to testify on Capitol Hill. But what Grok has done is brought this to a much higher level. And the difference between Grok and some other AI tools that are out there is it's the only one that'll produce deepfake pornography. It'll take pictures of children and put them in sexually explicit poses or positions. It could take a picture of you, Trey, or me, and put us in a sexually compromising position, completely naked, doing something we would never do. And so that's the difference between Grok and all of the other AI tools that are out there. And it's the handiwork of Elon Musk. He was instrumental in creating it. He's designing tools to keep users on it as long as possible. There have been multiple articles written in reputable newspapers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, articles about this. And our own investigation shows that anybody can go on the app and create sexually explicit images with other people's faces on them. And this was after Elon Musk announced that they would comply with the laws of every nation. They're not complying. They're not doing anything. And they're going to keep doing it as long as they can get away with it. And the laws in France and Europe and the UK, the European Union, are actually much tougher on online platforms than US laws because of our First Amendment, because of something called CDA 230. It's a federal law that grants lots of immunity to online platforms. We're way behind in enforcing laws and protecting children and women and people in this country than in Europe.
What is there are many things, of course, about this case that are disheartening, but one of the things that's most disheartening to me is when Elon Musk first bought Twitter and rebranded it ultimately to X. This issue was raised to him. He was made aware of the rampant CSAM, the child sexual abuse material that was all over Twitter. I mean, it was kind of like the biggest open secret that everybody on the internet knew. You can go and get any kind of pornography, to include illicit pornography that victimizes children. And he said at the time, this is going to be a major issue that I focus on. I want to eliminate that from X. Well, not only has it not been eliminated from X, but to your point, Benjamin, it's been accelerated and amplified with Grok that is now creating content out of whole cloth, right? It's content that didn't exist. You're taking a picture that a parent maybe uploaded of their child at a gymnastics competition or a basketball game, and it's being turned into illicit, illegal, and deeply disturbing pornography. So talk about what is the disconnect here between what Elon Musk says publicly and what is actually happening behind the scenes on X and on Grok.
Well, with all due respect to Mr. Musk, our observation is that he'll say whatever's necessary to get through the moment. If it suits his purpose and he's being examined toughly. He'll say whatever it takes to present a winning position. He's done nothing to eliminate the CSAM or the child pornography on his platform. In fact, if anything, the problem has gotten much worse. In fact, ironically, he's used the notoriety around Grok to basically pass all of the other competitive AI platforms that are Grok-like and become the number one AI app in the world because of the controversy surrounding it. In other words, Grok was a latecomer. It was created in, I think, 2023. There were half a dozen other AI platforms that were created ahead of it. And it was his goal to, through media, through advertising, or through controversy, make Grok number one. And they're pretty close to doing that right now. Nobody knew about it a year ago. Today, everybody knows about it. And while the French authorities have raided X's offices in Paris, and they're going to examine, apparently, Musk in April, all this publicity does is cause people to be curious about Grok. What is this thing? To go on Grok, maybe download the app, maybe pay for a subscription, and begin using it, because there are a lot of features on app that have nothing to do with sexually explicit imagery.
Sure.
It does a lot of things, many of them bad. Remember, there was a controversy a few months ago about Grok communicating with a child who was suicidal, had suicidal ideation, and Grok basically validated or affirmed his desires to commit suicide, and he did. And that's the downside. Now, Musk will say we're eliminating these features as they come up. Well, they should have eliminated them before they marketed this thing.
Yeah.
Right now, we know that not hundreds, but hundreds of thousands of women and adults and children, their images are being placed on Grok to the embarrassment of the individuals whose faces are being used. And you're having something called pornography extortion. In other words, I've got you engaging in a certain sex act with another person, and pay me, or else I'm going to post it online. And once it's online, we know that it can be downloaded and then re-uploaded. And even if Grok pulls it down, or X pulls these images down, once they're downloaded, they can be re-uploaded on the internet, and they'll be there forever. In other words, the notion of pulling it down as ending the problem, it doesn't. Once it's on the internet, there's a very high likelihood that it'll never come down, that these images will be there sometime. And you can use, now there's facial recognition software that I can take you, Tré, or myself, and I can find images anywhere on the internet where I appear. Okay, and if you have that, then you can find the explicit images where somebody's face has been placed in a compromising position. That's why this is profoundly dangerous, and that's why it's being investigated in Europe. I wish the FTC and law enforcement in this country would take action. But we're very slow. I mean, there are laws on the books right now that could be enforced to eliminate much of this, but they're not being enforced. There are laws against the possession and dissemination of child pornography. No one has brought charges against X. We know from our own lawsuit, there are hundreds of thousands of images every day that are bought, sold, and traded on X. Where's the Department of Justice? Where's the FTC? Is his relationship with Trump compromising them? We don't know. They seem to have a love-hate relationship. They love each other, and they hate each other. But this problem is not going to go away until Congress and the federal government stop it.
Yeah, it certainly is terrifying that a victim is really re-victimized ad nauseum, because, as you said, even if at this point, now 3 years in, Grok realizes, oh, you're right, we had a problem, there's so much damage that's already been done. And to your point, once it's been downloaded, it can be re-uploaded and re-uploaded and re-uploaded. That cycle doesn't really have an end date to it. Now, the Internet Watch Foundation, a UK-based watchdog, they conducted a recent analysis and found that people on the dark web are using Grok to create sexualized images of girls between the ages of 11 and 13, and I'm sure younger, but that is what this analysis found. So for people who are listening and say, okay, I realize that this is happening, but it can't be that widespread. Answer that for us.
Well, it is widespread. And if you don't think so, anybody with a computer can engage in this kind of behavior. You don't have to go on the dark web to do it. You can go on the regular web. Um, there are millions of people out there with bad intent. Just because you wouldn't do it doesn't mean that the person across the street or down the street would do it. In fact, once high school kids get their hands on this, and they already are, they can use this as revenge against a girl who may have broken up with them, or use it to extort money from the next door neighbor by taking the child's image and putting it on the internet. We need to pass something called the Defiance Act, which has been introduced into Congress, and it would give a civil cause of action to anybody whose image has been placed on the internet without their consent. Right now, there's a federal law called the Take It Down Act that makes it a crime to upload these images, non-consensual sexual images on the internet, but it's not being enforced. And it does make it a crime, and it does require these online platforms, starting in May of 2026, to take these images down if they're uploaded without your consent. But as you pointed out, and I pointed it out, if it's up there for 2 days, it can be downloaded by others and re-uploaded forever. And so, in a way, that's a toothless tiger right there. But the Defiance Act would give meat and potatoes cause of action to anybody whose images have been uploaded. And there's also something called the Kids Online Safety Act, which would prevent algorithms being used and other tools to be used that hypnotize and cause endless scrolling by children, because they're manipulated on the internet by constantly feeding them what they feel like they want to see. And you think your kid is upstairs at 12 o'clock at night asleep, forget it. So many of them are on their phones or on their laptops looking at these endless scrolls. And it's like starting to eat sugar. You can't eat one potato chip. Once you start, you can't stop. And all of this doesn't happen by accident. There are design features designed to hook kids. And the COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, would address that. We need to pass the Defiance Act, and we need Congress to get going. There's also a Stop CDA 230 law in Congress right now. This Community Decency Act, Section 230, weirdly named since it did the opposite of promoting decency, gives carte blanche immunity to online platforms for third-party content that's uploaded to them. That's what we're litigating against Twitter right now. The two 13-year-old boys whose images were child pornography and they were monetized, and images were sex trafficked on X. X claimed that they have immunity, that they can do that without any consequences. And that case is on petition for review to the Supreme Court, called Petition for Certiorari. Or it will be. It'll be filed in the next couple of days. And we're going to give the Supreme Court an opportunity to draw the parameters around CDA 230 to see how much immunity it actually gives. Because if you allow the online platforms like Musk and X to regulate themselves, well, the problem's only going to get worse. It'll never get better. Remember, the profit motive goes on and on and on. That's why I worry so much about these well-intended libertarians that say, well, let the market take care of itself. Well, when you have guys like Elon Musk running the market, or Pornhub running the market, or these online porn platforms, it's only going to get worse and never better.
Yeah. Yeah. So behind the scenes, I know that NCOSE does so much work advocating on behalf of people who have been victimized, but also wanting to be proactive and let's keep people from becoming victimized. When you have conversations with lawmakers and other movers and shakers in DC about this issue, what's the response? Is this something that lawmakers seem receptive to addressing?
They'll always say the right thing. They'll say they'll do whatever it takes. They'll get behind it. But what we're up against is a billion-dollar lobbying effort by big tech to stop this legislation. For example, COSA was passed out of the Senate. It had overwhelming support in the House of Representatives last year. It was supposed to be all Mike Johnson, all the speaker had to do, and Mike Johnson is an old friend of mine. All he had to do was include it in the ongoing spending resolution as part of the Republican package. And he pulled it out. He wouldn't let the House of Representatives vote on it and pass COSA. because Meta announced that they were building a $10 billion AI facility in Shreveport, Louisiana, which is whose district? Mike Johnson. And unemployment is very high there. It's going to employ thousands of people. And so those are his constituents. And so that tipped the scales. He wants to do the right thing, but how do you vote to stop that? Because the trade-off was if he allows COSA to get voted on and passed, Meta will announce withdrawal of its plans to build this $10 billion facility in Shreveport. That's the kind of hardball politics that are going on here, regrettably.
Well, my last question for you, because this is an issue that is apparently not going away anytime soon. So what advice would you give parents who are seeking to utilize AI? There are a lot of wonderful ways that it can be used in our culture, but there's a lot of problems, a lot of scary things out there too. There's a chance of being exposed to pornography and also being victimized and turned into a victim of CSAM, of pornography. So what advice would you give parents who are trying to successfully toe that line in their families?
Yeah, it's not a question of will a groomer or a pedophile or a person with bad intent approach your child. It's just a question of when, if a child's on the internet. I would not allow my child to have internet access iPhones until they're about 16 or 17, late teens, when they're mature enough to understand it. You get a child who's 11 and 12 years old with a smart device, and he discovers Pornhub. And just as he's coming into that stage, it's like catnip. You can't get it away from him. And when the dad comes along and tries to talk to his son about the facts of life, the 11-year-old knows more than the dad does about what's going on out there, regrettably. So I would keep smart devices away from my kids. If you want to give them a phone, don't give them a smartphone. Give the child a phone that will allow him to call you or you to call her, and make sure that they use devices in the house. It's a rule. And also contact your congressman or contact the NCOSE office. You can just Google the name NCOSE, NCOSE, or the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Email us, and we'll put you in touch with your constituents, talk about some legislation that needs to be passed. And this is something we can deal with and address very quickly if the will is there. But we're up against big tech lobbying, which is against us. It's a real knife fight in Congress right now. And it's not a partisan issue. We work closely with Republicans, we work closely with Democrats, and some of whom oppose us, some of whom will come in and support this legislation. But I won't mention his name, but we had a senator from a very conservative state was a major proponent of regulating the internet, and suddenly he did a U-turn and blocked it. He kept bringing in amendments to block it. We found out later that 3 months away from his election campaign, he got an infusion of massive cash from big tech. I don't want to turn people into cynics, but put pressure on your congressman. Let them know that you're watching to do something. There's legislation that can be passed.
Yeah. Well, I think it's critical to have organizations like yours, but it's also critical for parents, for people who are watching this conversation, to use your voice, right? Like you said, call your congressman, post about it, share about it. I think it's important to be educated about what AI is, what dangers exist on the internet, because they're not going anywhere, unfortunately. They're here to stay. So we have to do something to address it. And I appreciate, Benjamin Bull, the work that you do to help address this issue. So thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for covering this important issue, Trey. Really appreciate it.